Call to order, Bedford Township Planning Commission, regular meeting, August 8th, 2018. If we could all stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Karen, since we are missing our secretary, could you resume the roll?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Fritz? Present.
Present.
Mr. Zebek?
Here.
Mr. Garbrick?
Here.
Mr. Jenkins?
Here.
Mr. Frederick?
Present.
Mr. Anger?
Here.
And Stefan is excused.
Thank you. Next, if you could go over the minutes that we had for June 27th, 2018, I would entertain a motion. Oh, sorry. Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, we will have the approval of the minutes of the June 27th meeting, 2018, for anybody that was here.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of June 27, 2018, as written, and waive the reading thereof.
I have a motion. Any support?
I'll support.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we have the approval of the minutes of the July 11th meeting, 2018.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of July 11, 2018, as published, and waive the reading thereof.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have public comment. This is for anybody that would like to make a comment. This is anything that's not, that's going to be going at the public hearing. That's separate things. You can wait to do that if you're here for the public hearing. Yes, just come up to the podium and state your name and address, please, in the microphone.
I'm not sure if this is the right time to do this, but I'm here to speak on behalf of Pat and Joe Lascala for the rezoning of the northwest corner of Lewis and Smith.
That would be for the public hearing portion. So
Would
if
I be
you want
better off to
to,
wait for that?
if you want to wait for that, that's fine.
All right, I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no one else who would like to do public comment, we will move on to new business, which is, the first one is open to the public hearing regarding Joseph and Patricia Lascala request for a rezoning of parcel number 5802-570-01400 from PBO Professional Business Office to C3 General Commercial, located on the northwest corner of Lewis Avenue and Smith Road, otherwise known as 6601 Lewis Avenue, Temperance, Michigan.
Mr. Chairman, I move to open the public hearing.
Support.
And we'll do a roll call, or can we do
Yeah.
all in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mr. Zebek?
Aye.
Mr. Jenkins?
Aye.
Mr. Garbrick?
Aye.
Mr. Anger?
Aye. All right. Karen, can you give us a little rundown?
Sure. This request is to rezone approximately a 1.346 acre lot from PBO Professional Business Office to C3 General Commercial, located on the northwest corner of Lewis Avenue and Smith Road and within the supervisor's plat of Hazeldale Farms. The parcel located to the south of the subject parcel is Zone C3 General Business and R3 Single Family Residential. To the west, RT 2-family residential, west and north R2B Single Family Residential, and to the east across Lewis Avenue is C2 Shopping Center, and southeast is PBO Professional Business Office. That is the Monroe Bank and Trust vacant building. There is an existing building on site. It should be noted that should the site be rezoned, the currently permitted facilities for human care such as hospitals, sanitariums, and convalescence home use is not permitted use in a commercial zoning district. All other PBO permitted uses are allowed in commercial zoning districts. The master plan adopted on October 28, 2015 designates this area as mixed use and further describes the intent to promote mixed uses and flexible redevelopment in areas outside of the village centers, having a mix of residential, office, and lower-intensity commercial uses. The Planning Department requested a review of the rezoning request. Lucy Fortin from the Manikin Smith Group and planner for Bedford Township supplied an overall review of the subject area, and the information is included in your packet. We did list in your packet as well the uses permitted within a C3 zoning district. They were highlighted in yellow, so you didn't have to, unless you wanted to look through all of the conditions and stipulations. We just highlighted the uses permitted, and again, most of them are, have conditions attached to them. I don't know if you want me to, well, let me just finish here. It should be noted that all uses within the C2 and C1 zoning districts are also permitted within the C3 zoning district as well. Many of the uses require special approval, have stipulations, are conditioned, or are not viable on a 1.3 plus or minus acre lot. So in other words, if you have a C3, all uses within a C2 district are permitted within a C3 district, and then in the C2 zoning district, it states everything that's within a C1 zoning district is permitted in a C2. So all commercial uses are permitted within a C3. I don't know if you want me to go over the entire review from Planner Fortin, or if you just want me to read the conclusion.
I think just the conclusion will be enough.
Conclusion? Okay, conclusion. We suggest that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the Township Board to deny the rezoning request of parcel number 580257001400 from PBO Professional and Business Office to C3 General Business based on the following key reasons. The property is small and located at a busy intersection. Existing residential homes adjacent to the site may be negatively affected by the proposed use. A C3 rezoning would not provide a desired transitional zoning between residential and commercial uses. Other available sites, Zone C3 and C2, are located in the immediate vicinity of the property and are better suited for commercial uses, and other options for developing this property can be pursued, such as a conditional rezoning. I think that's pretty much everything, unless you have further questions.
Thank you, Karen. If there's anybody here that would like to speak on this issue, they can come to the podium.
Steve Lennox, 7261 Forest Valley Road, Lambertville, Michigan. And I'm here, like I mentioned, representing Pat and Joe LaScala in the rezoning of this property from PBO to C3. And it's rather disconcerting to hear the planner reject it. I find it unbelievable, to be honest with you. But anyway, I have 5 reasons why I think this is justified. And the first and most important reason is there's already a precedent. 3 years ago, I was involved in the rezoning of property right across the street on the southwest corner, 15 acres, to C3. Now, I'm not sure what the corner was zoned at the time. It might have been zone C1 or something. I don't know. But, and the second reason is this is consistent with the master plan. It has to be, because 3 years ago, the same master plan designation on the southwest corner was applied, and that was zone C3. So I'm struggling with the rationale that they come up with. The third reason is this makes sense. It's common sense. My years of commercial real estate, which have been many, I'm amazed at how oftentimes busy intersections get screwed up with zoning. And it is my view, and it's been proven many times, that you should have your most flexible uses on an intersection, and especially a signalized intersection. If there's a traffic signal, that means there's a lot of traffic. So, you know, that's where you want to have your more flexible uses. My fourth reason, and this is, I think this is significant too. The overuse of PBO zoning in Bedford has been an absolute disaster. And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, nobody wants to buy it. There's nobody running around trying to buy PBO zoning. Those are the hardest properties to sell in the township. And the fact is, it's been so overused over the last 20 years that I think we now have about a 300-year supply of PBO zoning. And when that happens, you know, you can't sell it, and the value goes down. It's a burden on the owners who are taxpayers. They keep paying taxes on it, especially if it's raw land, and, you know, nobody wants to buy it. And if you doubt me, go up and down Secor Road, which is the most thriving commercial corridor in Bedford, and almost every commercial property that's vacant is zoned PBO. You cannot sell it. Nobody wants it, and it's a problem. I think if the township wants properties to develop and develop tax base and economic development, that is a problem. And the last reason is, and contrary maybe to the planner, this is good for the township, and especially Lewis Avenue. Lewis Avenue's been struggling. I live and breathe it every single day. You know, the property values on that side of the road or on that side of the township are about, you know, sometimes half of what they are in Secor Road. And that's because of the planning and zoning decisions that have been made over the past 20 years. Having a flexible zoning on this intersection, which is not a stretch, considering the fact that you've already done it, you know, on the southwest corner. You know, that expands the pool of prospects that people always ask me, why can't we get good uses? Why can't we get good restaurants? Well, you can't put a restaurant in PBO. You can't put, you know, a nice little neighborhood small plaza, you know, we call a jewel box with a, you know, with an AT&T store and maybe a Chipotle. You can't do that in PBO. And you can't put a fitness center. I'm giving you some uses that I've had to turn away numerous times in my career on PBO sites. And I can tell you, nobody wants it. The owners don't want it. So, and I want to get another thing right out of the way here too, because this always comes up, you know, when people talk about C3 zoning. There will be no adult entertainment on this property. There will be no adult bookstores. I think the township already has an ordinance that precludes that from existing within 500 feet of a church, and this property meets that criteria. So, in conclusion, it's not the first time I've disagreed with the planner, but that's because I'm a practitioner. In conclusion, there are many more good reasons to rezone this to C3 than there are not to rezone it. There's a whole lot of upside, very little downside, you know, and so therefore, on behalf of the Lascalas, I respectfully request that you guys approve their decision to zone this from PBO to C3. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could just state your name and address, please.
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. I wasn't going to speak, but after listening to both sides, I feel I should. There's been no mention of what he's actually going to do with that property, so there's concerns. We also have the medical marijuana issue that's out floating around just waiting. So is that a possibility? We have to be responsible in our planning, in master plan. Obviously, C3 doesn't do well down there either. And for the people that are on that side of the township, we don't want what Stearns and Secor has to offer. It's been known now that it's the most dangerous intersection in the township. I'm a firm believer that the corner should be left empty because of the traffic lights and because of the traffic and the danger that is imposed when you put all these in and out roads on your corners. You can see that at BP at any given time. You stop at Dean Road, you got somebody shooting in and somebody shooting out, people in the turn lane that's not supposed to be there. We don't need to have Lewis and Smith be #2 most dangerous intersection in Monroe County. There is a ton of C3 that needs to be developed there, and there is the school, and the bank hasn't even been sold as yet. I have nothing against, you know, Mr. Lascala. He's been a great person and a great business person, and I believe people should have a say, but I'm concerned because it doesn't say what it's going to be, and there are people that live next door. So the priority needs to be not what the rest of the township would like to see it or what a realtor wants, but we have to be not only fiscally responsible to the residents of this township, but to those people that live in those homes. That's where the priority needs to be. That's where we need to be looking at those neighbors. I'm surprised none of them are here. Maybe they don't oppose it. Maybe they've already spoken to planning. But at any rate, I just, please look at the whole big picture. Thanks.
Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, Gail, for mostly irrelevant commentary. I'm not sure what medical marijuana has to do with this request, and it's that kind of stuff that drives me crazy in these kind of hearings. And I hope you guys can filter all that out of there. And as far as what the use is, they don't know yet. And they don't have to know. What they want is a fair opportunity to sell their property, which they've been trying to do for a number of years. And I ask you to think of the property owner in this case as well. As far as being up against residential, yeah, we had the same thing on the southwest corner, no problem. We had one guy speak up and he's fine. There's no problem. So all this stuff, all these things that people talk about, and having a corner property sit vacant, you can buy it, it's for sale. I mean, unbelievable to me. So I'm just asking the township to filter out the noise and look at the facts. We have a precedent that exists that's a strong one. And so that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, I have a question for Karen, when is appropriate?
We'll wait until after the public hearing is closed.
Okay,
Then we'll
okay.
make our comments. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this issue? If not, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Karen, could you take the roll?
Mr. Frederick?
Aye.
Mr. Zebek?
Aye.
Mr. Garbrick?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mr. Jenkins?
Aye.
Mr. Anger?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And I just would like to let the La Scala representative know that we are one member short today, so if you would like to proceed, we can, but we are one member short, and you still would require a majority of 4, I believe, yes. 4 out of 6. We would like to proceed, so, all right. Now you can ask your question.
Okay. Karen, this was rezoned back, I don't know how many years ago. Do you know offhand what was it, once it was rezoned to its current zoning, what was it before that? Because I know there was talk that there was possibly going to be some more buildings added, and I think that kind of obviously never happened.
I can't say with all certainty what it was previously zoned. It is within a platted subdivision. All of the parcels immediately to the west and north of it, of this subject site, are residentially zoned. So I would assume, I hate to assume, that it was probably residentially zoned.
Thank you.
And I can't tell you what year it was rezoned to PBO.
Well, the reason for my
But-
question was because its current zoning makes for a good buffer to the homes directly behind and to the west of it. C3 offers no buffer. And I didn't know if that was a commercially zoned that went to PBO or a residential that went to PBO. And I have another comment that really doesn't have an interaction between you and I, but if C3 is so popular, I ask you, why hasn't anything happened to the property directly south of it? It's on a corner, and nothing's happened there, and that was a rezone 3, 4, 5 years ago. So maybe it's not that desirable, but it is the proper zoning for that corner, the way you tell us. Sure, that's why I asked. I think that's customary.
have not sold the land to the south. We've had lots of activity of all different kinds of uses that can go in C3. Part of the problem has been pricing of that property, which, you know, it is what it is. And part of it has been the wooded nature of that property, which a lot of people don't want to deal with. It's heavily wooded. As far as the corner itself, I could have sold that 15 times. But you know, nobody's willing to pay the number that we have on it, and we'll get it. It's a fair question, but I want to take exception to something else you said, Tom. What's this idea, see, this idea of a buffer between residential and commercial? Why is it, and tell me how is it that PBO is a better buffer than
Can
something?
you put your mic up, sorry?
How is it that PBO is a better buffer than something in C3?
Because I believe that we look at PBO as office space. An 8 or 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. business. And minimal traffic, appointments primarily, attorneys might have an office in PBO. That's how we consider that to be a lighter buffer than going to a commercial zoning right next door to residential property.
And I would submit to you that thinking is what's got us a 300-year supply of PBO zoning. Because how do you reconcile that with the fact that you have village centers where you can put a retail store on the ground floor and residential above? I mean, it makes no sense. I can cite example after example of great developments. Levis Commons, where, you know, there's upscale residential right behind the retail, and they're selling them. I mean, I don't understand this idea of a buffer. What are you buffering? And you don't use zoning to buffer anyway. The upscale developments that I've been around in Arrowhead Park, you use landscaping and natural features to buffer. That's what you use. But, you know, if we go down that path, you know, you're gonna have a bunch of properties that won't sell, and frankly, you're gonna start having some owners that are pretty upset about it. Because these things it's time to take a different look. And, you know, some of the people that I've supported for township board know how I feel about this. I think you gotta get rid of PBO zoning, if you wanna know the truth. You don't need it. You absolutely don't need it. You know, all it does is impair, it restricts you so much that there's really no value. In some cases, less value than residential land or even farmland, which is tragic. So, you know, I'm in the business of trying to make stuff happen. You know, everybody predicted Armageddon on Seacorn Stearns. I did the corner where, the Walgreens, the bank, and Taco Bell. We did Taco Bell. Everybody was worried about, you know, that was already zoned C2. And they were worried about that house. Well, nothing's happened. You know, they were able to sell that house. No property values were diminished. People bring these things up, and there's no facts to back it. There's no facts that indicate any degradation of the quality of life whatsoever. In fact, it's just the opposite. It becomes better because people have commercial services that they want. You know, we're a small township. There's only so many real estate companies, insurance companies, other office uses that we have. We don't need more PBO zoning. We need more flexible zoning so things can get done. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Garvick?
I guess when I look at this and I look at Levis Commons, to me, that's a whole different deal. Levis Commons is there, and they're building the houses afterwards. It's a big, big difference. You choose to. If you live next to this, I don't know, Mr. Scala, but PBO, I think we gotta keep PBO to protect. Everybody has it, I think. You're a salesman, I get it, you're in the real estate business, but I don't agree with that at all. And I think it's there for a reason, and I think that's why townships have it, so.
Thanks, Joe. Mr. Jenkins, sorry, thank you.
I was here when the corner was originally rezoned to PBO, and at the time, the owner was okay with it. I mean, that's the use he intended was for his financial firm. And I understand that people buy properties later on, want to use it differently. So I can understand the need to bump it up from PBO to a commercial zoning, but I can't justify the C3, basically because of the uses that are included in there. And I understand some of the uses can't be put in there because of that, but I would be in favor of something less than C3. It's too small for C2. So,
Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
I'm really wondering why the request isn't for C1. C1 would be commercial. C1 would permit commercial uses. As Mr. Jenkins said, C3 not only permitted uses, but uses with special approval. We can't, if it was zone C3, you can't interfere with the potential uses that are permitted. And so, there's a whole list of those, and I've looked at them over the years. As Mr. Zebek said earlier, we had not too long ago some discussion that there was going to be some additional building on that site. I don't know whatever happened to that, but that's okay. It's, people make decisions as they go. Medical marijuana cannot go in commercial zoning, and it can only go in industrial zoning and in agricultural zoning. That's a state law. So that's with respect to medical marijuana. I don't know what's going to happen with the recreational marijuana that's on the ballot, or if there'll be any changes at the Licensing Bureau in Lansing with respect to recreational marijuana. That's another story. We'll worry about that when and if it comes along. I, too, have difficulty supporting C3. I would have looked, maybe not favorably, but I would have understood C1. And those uses, we talk about buffers or whatever we want to talk about, that's part of the ordinance, and it may not be something that everybody agrees with, but the buffering is where we are now. And if there are other processes that could use to protect a C1 business, a C2 business, or a C3 business from the adjoining neighborhood, just to keep light pollution and noise pollution down, then in that event, we should be looking at it. Again, I think, as Mr. Jenkins said, I would have looked more favorably on C1. C2 doesn't work because of the lot size. And all of the other comments that are in here through either our planning consultant or just our general ordinances that we have in place today, which we can talk about some other day. I have no further comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Karen, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to offer clarification that it does require 3 acres to develop a C2, and this parcel does not qualify.
Thank you. Is there any more? Yes.
I'm sure the planning commission already knows this, but this action tonight, whatever the decision is merely a recommendation to the township board, whether it's approval or disapproval. It's a recommendation. It'll go to the Monroe County Planning Commission next for another recommendation. Then the elected officials at the township board level would make the decision.
In other words, we need a motion one way or another of approval or denial.
Right? It's a recommendation.
Recommendation of approval or denial. Thank you. If there's no other comment, I will entertain a motion if someone would be so moved to make one.
Oh, I have one other question, maybe,
Yes.
I found it as I went back through here. At one time, I mean, they talk about the ability, or, I'm sorry, the availability of water and wastewater treatment. At one time, there was some serious deficiencies, and maybe Dennis, you recall, of surface drainage in that area. There was some negotiations, I think, with Luther House and a number of others in order to satisfy the surface drainage issues there. I don't know if that's still the case or not. I don't think it necessarily relates to the rezoning here, but again, maybe we ought to look into that as we go forward too.
And that would be something that would be addressed at site plan approval, should
Yeah, well,
be further developed.
okay, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Jenkins?
Question for Marty. If the owner decided to do it, could he downgrade this to a C1 request without going through another public hearing? Sorry.
They have applied for a C3 rezoning. That is what they're requesting. That's really what we ought to be acting on. If through your discussion, you convey maybe a little bit more willingness to consider a similar type zoning but downgraded in the intensity, like a C1. We have, I believe, if I remember, has been a long time, allowed that to proceed if the applicant endorsed and requested a change in their request downgrading to a C1. What you worry about is when we publish this notice of hearing, whether or not the people who showed up or the people who didn't show up knew what was going to be discussed and had an opportunity to come and participate. So if we change what their application is, different than what was published for a notice of hearing, are we providing the public with due process and reasonable notice to come react at this public hearing if we all of a sudden change gears? But I believe that we have done that in the past as long as it stays in the commercial realm of things, like a C3 to a C1. If we would go to a C3 to an RT or multiple family residential, that's a totally different scope of request, and I would say that we would have to republish and have another public hearing. Did that answer your question?
Mr. Garvey?
Can I ask Mr. Scott a question or no? And just thinking out loud, would C1 kind of work for you if we would?
It would definitely be considered.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to know more about what's involved with C1.
Can you come to the podium? Thank you.
Yes, I would like to know more about what C1 is all curtails in. I'm not that familiar with it. I do know a little bit more about the C3 than I do C1. And as far as going as the complex itself, okay, it is designed for professional use. I mean, I put thousands of dollars into this complex to build new buildings identical to the one that's there. So whoever buys the buildings and stuff, or buys the property, would be very thrilled because the rest of the, I mean, it's ready to go. All they have to do is purchase it and start construction. I've got all the zoning done, I got everything done with it. You mentioned about the sewers and stuff, that's all been taken care of. That's done. Mank has been involved with that. They did aerial views, the whole bit. I put thousands of dollars into this thing. But now you say, well, why are you getting rid of it? I want to retire. I'm at the age where I want to retire, okay? And I am a doctor, okay? So as far as going with this medical marijuana thing, forget that's not gonna happen, all right? It just isn't. And as far as going is, you know, if we get it into C3, you know, I would never, ever sell it to, you know, a strip joint or somebody that's gonna destroy the property. I would like to see the Tempest Road, because I've been there a while, you know? I would love to see Lewis Avenue meet up with Secor. I mean, what's that, I mean, we're gonna work on Lambertville and produce that real well and do everything for them. What about Temperance? Just nothing. There's nothing there. You drive up and down Lewis and half the buildings are closed. You know, I mean, why? Why is that, you know? Well, because all this PBO. And I agree, you know, what he said, you know, I mean, just, that's what it is. Nobody wants it. They don't want to build on it. You know, because, you know, it has that reputation that if you get it, you'll never get rid of it. Do you see what I mean? And so a lot of guys that I talk to, businessmen, attorneys, you know, that kind of stuff, you don't want that. Why would you want it? It's PBO, you can't sell it. You never, you know, if you go to retire, good luck. You know, and I'm thinking we don't want to develop Lewis Avenue. I mean, take a look at it. You know, it's just barren land. There's nothing there. I mean, Zyler's even closed down. Yeah, and they've been there forever. You know, so, and that's where I stand, you know. But to answer your question and stuff, yes, I'd be interested in C3, but I'd like to know more about it. Okay? Thank you. Sure.
Yes, Karen?
If Mr. La Scala would like, I can go over, we can provide you with the uses that are permitted in a C1, but I can
Sure.
briefly go over those right now if you'd like to hear
Oh.
at least what the uses are, or would you prefer just to have a copy?
I'd just like to have a copy of it.
Okay.
Because I go over with my wife and stuff
Okay.
like that too.
Yes, Marty?
I would recommend the planning commission take action on what is before them tonight, which is C3. And if in the midstream of the process, they receive a request in writing from the applicant to change gears, then that can be considered.
Yes, Mr. Frederick?
Could I do an alternative, and that is postpone this until the next planning commission meeting, at which time he could deliver that request? Because we've already published the hearing, and the hearing is for tonight. And so can we suspend, well, actually, it's a motion to postpone to the next meeting, to hear his request at that time?
I think you probably could if you had the consensus with the applicant. Otherwise, I mean, he has the right to this process moving forward. And I would not believe that you should be deferring this to another meeting unless the applicant also was requesting that.
I accept that, but I think, as I'm hearing my colleagues, this may crash and burn if we have to do a C3. It might. I don't know what, there's been no vote, and I'm just listening to what my colleagues are saying. So it might be, this is something you have to decide. It might be in your best interest to consider what C1 looks like, talk to our planning department, see if it meets your criteria. And if it doesn't, you come back next time and say, no, I'm not changing, and we'll make a vote. I'm just suggesting that as an alternative.
What exactly happens if you take a vote for C3 and it's turned down tonight? Is that, we go on
From
to
there,
we
it
go on
will-
to Monroe County.
Yeah, the process would be, goes from here to county planning to the board, and recommendation going all along through there is that the planning commission recommended denial, if that's what happened.
Okay, there's one thing that I guess I would like, before we decide on C1. I hear all the discussion at the board, but I never heard anybody say, how do you justify turning this request down when you got C3 right across the street? How does that happen? How can that be?
Steve, the C3 across the street, I know you said before it was the exact same situation. It's not. In this situation, you've got a platted subdivision, residential zoning on two sides. That's the difference.
You have, the C3 across the street is right next door to a residential property, right next door.
One.
But
Now you're talking about a whole subdivision?
they didn't show up. And, oh, wait a minute. Where's the subdivision tonight? I don't see him. And I mean, this is where I come out with when does the property owner's rights supersede those that don't bother to show up? I mean, and tell me what the downside is of C3. I'm not understanding that. And the second follow-up question is, have any of you ever zoned anything in Bedford Township C3, ever? I'd like to know. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that we have this ordinance, and all I ever hear about it is the horrible things that can go there.
Why don't you let your client digest the information that Karen just gave him and let him make the decision?
Can we get an answer to the questions I just asked? Because I think the applicant deserves answers to those questions. Do you agree?
The reasons are stated in the Wade Trim recommendation.
We don't
and-
have the Wade Trim recommendation, which is a problem. We should see that.
We should make sure you get one.
We should have had it before the meeting,
Yeah,
frankly.
yeah, I don't know the reason for that. But it's an adjacency issue for me. And there are people that are already there, and for whatever reason, decided not to come to this hearing.
Because it's probably not a big deal to them, Dennis.
Well,
That's the whole point.
yeah, Steve, I'm not here tonight to argue with you. I'm just telling you that your client should be making the decision on the property.
Excuse me, Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
The people, I know the people that live behind us and stuff like that, and I've talked to them several times. They're low-income people. They don't care. They don't have a clue. And I said to them, I said, well, you know, they said, well, you know, I see that you have your property up for sale. I said, sure it is, you know? And they said, well, what do you plan on doing with it? I said, well, we'd like to get open it up.
Could you speak in the microphone, please?
Pardon?
Speak in the microphone.
I'm sorry. And what they said was that, you know, well, what are you gonna do with it? And I says, well, you know, we're just gonna bring more business in to Temperance. You know, that's what we wanna do, some legitimate business. And they said, you know, I said, well, what do you think? They don't care, they don't have a clue. I said, they're low-income people, they're trying to survive. They don't care. They really don't care what goes in there.
But with that same note,
And they're
that's
hoping
one of the
that-
reasons why we are here to help protect everyone in the township this equally.
Sure, you bet, exactly. The ones that I talked to, you know, they wanted like maybe fast food places, just like Secor. Secor has all the fast food. Why can't we have fast food over there? And that's what they wanted, like Capoli's and stuff like that. Subway would be beautiful in there. That's what they want. Is, man, I could just walk to Subway, it'd be kind of cool, instead of driving clear across town to get to Subway. That's the way they think, okay? So, and that's what they're doing. What you're trying to do, is you're trying to protect them from themselves and saying, well, you don't need this stuff. I beg to differ, okay? That's not fair. It's not fair to them.
Mr. Garvick?
I guess one of the questions that I think we're trying to work with here is, if it's C1, can you still get a Subway? Can you do some stuff? I mean, we're not here to,
That's what I don't,
Yeah.
see, that's what I'm looking to.
Restaurants are permitted in C1, brew pubs, microbreweries, and that.
I mean, it's,
If that's the case, yeah,
Restaurants.
yeah. What about, why not the C3? Give us more of an opportunity to get other businesses in there. Why have we have to stick with C1 if that's what the case is, just for a Subway? Why can't we open up for everybody? You know, you talk about, you know, you can't, well, you know, you open it up so that you can bring in a spirit joint or something. There's a church right across the street. We can't do that, you know? And all these other things that people are dreaming up that's gonna happen won't happen, you know? It's just the way it is.
but if you can put it to C1, what's the things you're asking?
But that still limits us to what we're gonna be doing. I wanna be like the one across the street. That's a C3, and I said, why can't I be a C3? You know, I mean, it's not fair. You know, and my property's all developed, it's beautiful. But yet, we're gonna limit it so I can't sell it. We're gonna limit it so I have to file bankruptcy on it, and let it sit empty. It's not fair, guys. I'm telling you, it's not fair. You know, I mean, you got C3 across here, you got C2 on the other side, you know, and the bank was talking about, which I think they might have sold already, and I talked to the bank several times.
It did so.
They did sell, see, it did sell.
That's
And
C3.
so he's gonna be changing it too. You see what I mean? But I can't have C3. I don't know why. You know, I mean, I feel traded. I feel like you guys are saying, hell, hell with him if he retires. Who cares? Who cares if he does or not? We're gonna do it our way, and we're gonna have this here, and you can't have what you want. All I want to do is just open up that corridor, and let's get Temperance so that, it's thriving, just like Secor and Lambertville. Let's get them thriving over there. Did you notice that there's a lot of doctors and stuff over there on Secor? And I've talked to them, I've dealt with them, they don't want to go over to Lewis, there's nothing there. There's so many times that they could have built over there, and they did not, because there's nothing there. There's too many empty buildings. And that's a good business move on their part. Bad on mine, good on theirs. I thought maybe that we would develop it. That's the reason my wife and I wanted to be there. I have a thriving business, I've got over 3,000 patients I take care of. And that's a very large practice for a single doctor, okay? And, and the state of Michigan knows that, But now that I want to retire, because I'm getting kind of burned out about it, I want to sell the property. I want to build it, sell it, and then move on. But if I can't sell it, I file bankruptcy on it, and then it sits empty permanently. So that's where it stands. So it's in your hands. But I will take a look at the C1, and see if there's something we can do, because I think that at this point, we might be limited to that, because that's what it sounds like you guys wanted to do. And, you won't bend on the C3 thing. I'm hoping you think about this. I hope you look at it and say, hey, this is a legitimate thing, and he's willing to do this. Okay, not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone that would like to entertain a motion?
Are we entertaining a motion to postpone or to go ahead and vote on it?
Mr. Frederick?
I move that the request to rezone parcel number 5802-570-01400 from PBO to C3 be postponed till the next meeting of the Planning Commission for the for the petitioner to review C1 zoning opportunities and to come back at that meeting and tell us whether he wants C1, C3, so we can make a decision. Thank you.
We have a motion. Do I have a support?
Support.
Roll call.
Okay, Marty, go ahead.
Question, Commissioner Frederick said until next meeting.
Next regular scheduled Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, there are times when the meetings are canceled for lack of agenda, so,
Next regularly scheduled.
okay.
All right, Karen?
Well, if it's postponed, it's not regularly scheduled. Or is it? Oh, we have a schedule.
We do have a schedule of the second and the fourth Wednesdays of the month.
Is there information that it's going to be, the next one would be,
August 22nd, we now have nothing scheduled for that agenda at this time.
oh, nothing for the next meeting?
Not at this time.
Then the first meeting in September. That would be the next
That's the 12th.
12th, okay.
We do have something on the 12th,
So it'd be September 12th. Is that it? Okay. Postponed to September 12th. And if he wants to come, oh, okay, we have a motion, a second, right? Okay.
Would you like to second that one still?
Friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Karen, can you take the roll?
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Mr. Jenkins,
Yes.
Mr. Garbrick,
Yes.
Mr. Fritz,
Yes.
Mr. Zebek,
Yes.
Mr. Anger.
Yes,
Motion carried.
thank you. Next, we have a request for a sign waiver for Forest View Lanes on parcel number 5802-028-02300, otherwise known as 2345 West Dean Road, Temperance, Michigan. Karen, could you give us a rundown of this one?
Yes, again, the applicant is Forest View Lanes. Rich Kenny is the applicant. As a request to allow an LED message board was granted by the Planning Commission on July 11th, 2018. When considering the installation of the sign, it was determined the sign was well below the road elevation, and the sign ordinance states the grade from which the height of the sign shall be measured and where the bottom of the sign or sign apparatus above ground shall be located shall be no more than 1 foot above and no more than 1 foot below the nearest street or road grade. The applicant considered backfilling the area, however, filling the area may affect drainage on the site and impede the natural water flow to the ditch. Therefore, a height waiver is being sought to increase the base height by 28 inches to bring the sign up to grade. Should the request be considered, the following waiver is required. To permit an increase in base height to bring the sign up to road grade with an overall sign height from the existing grade of 9 feet 4 inches. The following shall be considered for inclusion in any motion to approve. All required permits shall be obtained from Bedford Township. The applicant shall continue to maintain the entire perimeter landscaped area of the base, no less than 2 feet wide, growing and in healthy condition, and the sign shall be located outside of the road right-of-way and the driveway clearance area.
Thank you, Karen. Mr. Kenny, would you like to come to the podium? You can just state your name and address.
Rich Kenny, 7824 Jackman Road, and owner of Forest View as well.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Apologize for the last meeting. I wasn't able to make it, didn't have the message, so that's why I wasn't here. So all we're asking for is to be able to raise the base. It's about $20,000 to put sand in there to build the base up, to fill that whole area in. Base is a couple $1,000s difference. Trying to save a little bit of money from hauling 500 ton of sand in to build that area up. So that's really the request.
Thank you.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
We'll take the old sign
I do have
down
to let you
and all
know,
that
too,
stuff.
that we are one member shy today, so you still need to.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll take the old signs down and everything too, so it's gonna clean up the area, look really nice. Redo the landscaping up there and everything as well.
Yeah, and I've driven by it, the road, or the yard drops down quite a bit, so it would be really hard to even see the sign from the road. Karen?
If I may, you might want to use, if you're going to approve this, you may want to use the same portion of the conditions that were listed in the previous motion. They're on the last page of your packet when it was approved,
Thank you.
just for clarification for Mr. Kenny, should he need it.
Yes, Mr. Garvey?
Yeah, I think it's, there's not too many properties you can drive around, and the property's that much lower than, you got a unique situation there that's really different, that it drops so much. Most of them got your road, and it's pretty even, so it does make it, so I think it just makes sense because of the way the property is, the underlayment of it.
Yes, Karen?
Also, if I may, the increase of the base height will not increase the sign height more than 7 feet above the grade of the road, which is what is permitted. So,
So that part still remains in the,
correct, they will,
in compliance?
yes, correct.
Yes, Mr. Jenkins?
Since I made the motion for the first one, I'll make this one. For the parcel number 5802-028-023-002345 West Dean Road, to allow for an LED message board. Conditions of approval are no more than 5-second interval. Message changes. Removal of the current signage and existing message board. All required permits shall be obtained from Bedford Township, and to maintain the entire perimeter landscaped area of the base no less than 2 feet wide, growing and in a healthy condition, and a new sign must be located outside of the road right-of-way, with the height being, Karen?
9 feet 4 inches
9 feet 4 inches
from the existing grade.
from the existing grade.
I'll support.
Karen, could you take roll?
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mr. Garbrick,
Yes.
Mr. Anger.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, we have a request for a final site plan approval for d and D Land LLC, Dollar General, on parcel number 5802-032-03905, otherwise known as 2837 West Stearns Road, Temperance, Michigan. Karen, if you could give us the rundown for this one.
Yes, again, the subject site consists of approximately 3.13 plus or minus acres, which was rezoned from R2A Single-Family Residential to C1 Local Business with a contractual agreement on February 21, 2017. The contractual agreement states total buildings shall not exceed 9,000 square feet as it is consistent with the surrounding zonings and a 4-year term limitation permitted by Michigan Legislative 125.3405. The proposed building is 7,500 square feet, and the proposed use is for a Dollar General store to be located on the corner of Summerfield and Stearns Roads. The developer has worked closely with the Monroe County Road Commission on the site ingress-egress to determine the access point to be best suited off Summerfield Road. The site plan also supplies walkability with sidewalks meeting the requirements of Section 400.1104D Site Development Standards for C1 Local Business District. The properties to the south are R2A Single Family Residential and West PUD Plan Unit Development underlying zoning R2A and is the location of Gray Estates. The properties east of Summerfield Road are RT Two Family Residential and north of Stearns Road is Zone C1 Local Commercial and R2A Single Family Residential. Regarding the landscaping plan that is sheet L1.0 provides for 12 trees and 50 shrubs for perimeter landscaping and 4 trees and 15 shrubs for base and perimeter landscaping. It is also noted that a total of 16 trees and 68 shrubs are proposed to account for required screening across from residential, commercial, and required base and permitted landscaping. The site plan also indicates the existing tree line to the west is to remain and a 2.5-foot high landscape berm to the south will be included. Per section 400-1907.12, detention pond required side slopes in the bottom of the pond be sodded or seeded, and 1 deciduous shade or evergreen tree and 10 shrubs shall be planted for every 100 lineal feet of pond perimeter as measured along the top bank elevation. Also per section 400-1907.15, protective screening in the form of an obscuring wall, fence, or landscaping shall be required whenever non-residential use in a residential district abuts directly upon land zoned for residential purposes. Walls must comply with the requirements of section 400.1911. Screening non-residential use in a commercial office or industrial district from adjacent land zoned or used for residential or agricultural use requires a height of 6 feet. Fences must comply with the requirements of section 400-1912. Fences within a front yard shall not exceed 4 feet in height and shall be restricted to decorative fences. Fences within a side or rear yard shall not exceed 6 feet in height and shall not extend beyond the front building line or required front yard setback, whichever is greater. And fences that are visible from a public right-of-way or that may be required to enclose a detention pond shall be restricted to decorative fences. As stated in section 400.1907.20, modifications to landscape requirements in consideration of overall design and impact of a specific landscape plan and in consideration of the amount of existing plant material to be retained on site, the Planning Commission may modify the specific requirements outlined herein, provided that any such adjustment is in keeping with the intent of this section. The Planning Commission may base its decision on any one or more of the following circumstances which exist in connection with the site. Topographic features or other unique features of the site create conditions such that strict application of the landscaping regulations would result in a less effective landscape design than an alternative landscape design. B, parking, vehicular circulation, or land use are such that required landscaping would not enhance the site or result in the desired aesthetic effect. C, the public benefit intended by the landscape regulations could be better achieved with a plan that varies from the strict requirements of this section. D, landscaping would restrict proper storm water drainage. The wall requirement when abutting a residential zoning or residential use shall be discussed, particularly along the south side, as the proposed 2.5-foot berm with plantings may not adequately shield the neighboring residential property from headlight pollution as vehicles exit the site. As well, while the detention basin landscaping meets the requirements of the ordinance in that the landscaping is not limited to the top of the pond bank, perhaps landscaping could be increased in front of the 2 west parking spaces to contain light pollution from the residential zoning district to the west, as no additional buffering is being proposed along the ravine to the rear of the building. It should be noted that in warm months, foliage will act as a buffer. However, winter months may not provide adequate buffering from the residential district to the west and south. Parking. Retail stores with 5,000 to 15,000 square feet requires 1 parking space for each 150 square feet of usable floor space. The site plan indicates there is a total of 5,956 square feet of usable floor space, which requires 40 parking spaces. The site plan displays a total of 40 parking spaces that includes 2 barrier-free spaces, which meets the requirements of the ordinance. Regarding lighting, in reviewing the illumination plan, building-mounted lighting with more than 60-watt bulbs shall be fully shielded and directed downward to prevent off-site glare. The intensity of light shall not exceed 10-foot candles within any site, and where property abuts a residentially zoned site, a maximum of 0.5-foot candles at the property line is permitted. The site plan indicates there is no proposed parking lot fixtures, and while the proposed building-mounted lighting meets the 0.5-foot candles at all property lines, it should be verified the proposed wall pack lighting will be installed with over the 50-watt bulbs will be fully shielded and directed downward. Dumpster screening. A dumpster location has been identified on the plan and screening has been identified. It should be noted per section 41907B, dumpsters for other than 1-family or 2-family residential uses shall be screened from view from any adjacent property and from any public or private road or service drive when a residential use or residential district is across from said service drive. The screening shall be high enough to block the view of the container, mechanical equipment, etc., and similar equipment inconsistent of a wall or fence or landscape material. They do comply with that. Loading and unloading per section 41906 per usable gross floor area of 10 feet by 70 feet loading and unloading space is required and shall be provided for inside a building structure or part thereof or to the rear yard or side yard not facing a street. The site plan indicates the designated concrete pad is 15 feet by 50 feet truck loading area within the front yard. Per section 41906, all exterior loading and unloading area adjacent to residentially zoned district or residentially used parcel shall comply with the landscaping screening wall requirements as designated in sections 1907 and 1911, except that the wall shall be 6 feet in height. However, notwithstanding the preceding sentence, the Planning Commission may require additional and/or different landscape or screening wall requirements. The Planning Commission may designate the size, location, color, materials, and other aspects of the landscaping screening wall requirements. This parcel has 2 front yards, and it is not possible to locate the loading and unloading truck parking to the rear of the property. Therefore, consideration may want to be given to add some low-growing landscape plantings along the east side of the 10 by 70 loading and unloading truck pad to buffer the area from the street. Signage. In a C1 district, each lot or parcel is permitted 1 accessory wall sign not to exceed 50 square feet in area. In addition, for each lot or parcel, 1 freestanding accessory sign not to exceed 50 square feet in area, not to exceed 7 feet in height. The plan indicates 1 wall sign located on the front of the north elevation and a pylon sign at the corner of Summerfield and Stearns Road. However, there are no dimensions of the proposed signage to verify they meet the requirements of the ordinance. All permanent freestanding signs shall be monument signs, and all dimensions must be confirmed. If the applicant wishes, they can return at a later date and seek sign approval. If that is the case, any final site plan approval of the submitted plan shall exclude approval of the signage included on the plan. Approvals have been received from the Manikin Smith Group on 7/26/18 with comments conditions. Monroe County Road Commission dated July 26, 2018 with comments and conditions. Monroe County Drain Commission dated July 18, 2018 with comments and conditions. Bedford Township Fire Department dated 6/27/18 with comments. Should final site plan approval be granted, you may want to include the following. Final site plan approval shall be contingent upon addressing all comments, conditions of MSG, MCDC, MCRC, and BTFD review letters, and any discussions or changes made by the planning commission in regards to the landscaping screening wall requirements to the south where the property abuts a residential zoning district, landscaping screening of the loading and unloading area, and signage details. It should also be noted the contract rezoning agreement, which was recorded on 3/28/18, does not allow for any variances or waivers.
Is that all, Karen?
I can go for hours.
No. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Wake up,
She can, too.
wake up.
All right, do we have representation for Dollar General? If you'd like to come up to the podium and state your name and address. I would like to let you guys know, too, that we are one member shy tonight, so you would still need a four-member majority. Would you like to proceed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jason Raleigh with AR Engineering, Kalamazoo, Michigan. Just to represent the seller and the developer and Dollar General. So really, we're just here to answer any questions you guys have. Karen summarized it very well with some of the recommendations and other aspects of the project. So I don't know if there's any specific questions. I won't go through. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the plans?
Yes, so I think the best would be just have, if any questions, then you can answer them, because that was a very thorough summary. Mr. Frederick?
The site plan supplies walkability with sidewalks meeting the requirements of the section. Sidewalks starting where and ending where, because they start nowhere and end nowhere, other than being in the front of the parcel, I guess. So, talk to me, Karen, about sidewalks here. I mean, I think it's okay to have them, but I'm not sure it's walkability
Well,
now.
right now, they may not be connected to adjacent sidewalks, but C1, all commercial zoning districts, in fact, do require sidewalks be installed. The question did come up, not with these particular engineers, but the contract zoning on this site prohibits any requests for variances or waivers.
Okay. All sidewalks we will have. Since this is a corner lot, did they get 2 signs on the building? Or is that in the contract zoning? I wasn't here when that.
Technically, they could, however, I don't know what they would consider the front of their building because they have placed the building on the lot diagonally.
Yeah.
So I'm not,
I'm just.
I mean, if they can propose
I'm saying,
something.
I don't want
but-
to come back later and somebody say, ooh, I get 2 signs.
I did have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Raleigh on the comments that we made regarding the south property line, the signs that are being proposed, and the buffering with the detention basin as well. So the lighting downwards, so he may be able to address that this evening if he wants to propose a sign at this time or come back at a later date.
Something else. Oh, it's an absolute imperative that that tree line next to the ravine and all of that be carefully guarded and kept, because right across that ravine are all of those homes. And clearly, light pollution, noise pollution, those sort of issues will be bugging Karen. If, in fact, of course, in the wintertime, the trees are all gone, so we're putting a fence in front of that too, in the back?
They do not have a fence proposed at that, along that tree line. The rear of the building, which is not lighted as much as it is in the front, which is away from, that was part of the discussion we had with headlights, headlight pollution coming across there in the winter, that maybe we can offer some additional buffering from that parking lot.
I would like to see that if it's all possible. And lastly, I've looked at this corner, and I know the road commissions approve it, but boy, oh boy, that's a really close section for people coming around, making a right turn from Stearns onto Summerfield. I know they've approved it, but there's gonna be some real screeching of tires there every once in a while, because people have the green light, they don't slow down much coming around that corner. And, whatever, they've already approved it, so, if they think that that's a sufficient, safety divide, or safety, zone, that's fine. It was interesting, I read the road commission letter, and it says we've reviewed their planning, commission, I'm sorry, their plan, and they're not approved. But then down at the bottom it says, but go ahead, you can approve it if you want to, subject to their concerns. And lastly, here we go again with this changing of materials for the drainage. And the board at the last meeting kind of beat up on me a little bit by saying this is about the fourth or the fifth one of these changes that are coming through. When is the planning commission going to get that changed? And I said, we're working on it. I don't know if I'm true or not. Are we working on it?
We're always working on it.
Yeah, well,
It is a general code ordinance, so it will not come before the planning commission. It will only go before the township board.
okay, I'll just wear my steel underwear that night. I have no other questions, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
On the fencing around the south side of the property to prevent headlight glare, had you given any consideration to that?
Peter Olazuk with Midwest V. I'm the proposed developer and builder and owner. We had received comment from Karen in regards to that, and we walked the property prior to the meeting, and if it's the, I guess, the wishes of the planning commission that a fence be installed in that area, I have no objection to that. So
Yeah.
it certainly seems like that would be fitting in regards, so
Yeah.
I would assume a 6-foot, is
Wood board on board?
yeah, I mean, if we did a shadow box, I mean, that's a pleasant fence.
I mean,
So-
it's a nice barrier now, but in the wintertime, it's not gonna be there anymore.
Agreed, and, truthfully, I think they've been incredible neighbors just for maintaining a portion of the property that they have. So I think for us installing a fence in that area, it certainly won't, create any adverse effect to what we're proposing, so.
The loading, unloading area?
What about it?
Had you proposed any fencing for that?
Well, we had actually, with Karen's comments, obviously proposing I think we've got 5 pine trees or evergreens that are identified on that south property line, actually being able to kind of spread those out accordingly now that we're actually providing a permanent buffer on that south side. And we could actually, if it would be acceptable to the board, would like to just relocate those and actually do that as a screening around the, kind of the loading and the dumpster enclosure. Now, bear in mind that the dumpster enclosure is fully screened anyways, with the shadow box fence, along with, it's got chain link that's actually got slats in it, so yeah. But that would be, certainly a thought would just be to be able to reallocate those evergreens in that area just to provide additional buffer and screening for that space, if that would be acceptable.
Mr. Predator?
I missed one. I look at where you're going to have the loading and unloading, and bring a 53-footer in there. You got enough turning radius to get that truck in and out?
We do.
Okay. There were no dimensions on this, so I'm just kind of guessing.
Nope, that's fine. Yep, we're required from our tenant to make sure that we can provide adequate maneuvering for their
Okay,
semi-deliveries.
That's fine, thank you.
Mr. Jenkins?
Can I make a motion?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I would make a motion to,
Karen has a comment real quick.
Can you get clarification on the signage?
oh, yeah. I'll make it part of my motion.
May I answer the question in regards to the signage?
Sure.
Dollar General specifically handles any permitting variances, obviously, since they won't be allowed, so what's allowed per ordinance is going to be installed on the sign. I know from my standpoint and my relationship with Dollar General, the desire is to solely have the sign on the frontage that's going to be over the doors, the main entrance point, and then doing, obviously, a monument sign based off the feedback from the planner and Karen, in the location of where the pylon sign's currently being mentioned. I guess the key thing is we're not gonna be asking for a variance, so we're going to adhere to the ordinance, with what's allowed, or else they're not gonna get a sign in that certain spot. But, in regards to the signage for our site plan, it'd be wish that we could still move to get our approvals, knowing full well that we obviously have to comply with the ordinance based off of what's there, and that's something that we do not take care of. So that is actually way down the line after the fact, because obviously they're not going to go through the process of getting that approval until they make sure that it's actually even feasible to do the, really kind of the essential part, which is the building, so.
I do have one question before you make a motion. Do you have any, I see a highlighted orange spot here on one of the pages. Is that a possibility of a fence there or buffering as well, Karen? Is that why that is highlighted for light traffic?
Is it the last 2 parking spaces?
Yes.
Oh, I can answer that as well. We did get that feedback, and if it would be something where just a couple of additional evergreens would need to be planted there, we can certainly do that as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would like some sort of buffering for extra light, for like winter time.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more of an evergreen and not something that would be deciduous, so it'd be a permanent, year-round buffer.
Thank you,
there,
that's
so.
what I was hoping you would
Yeah.
say.
So, again, Karen has kind of expressed kind of all the thoughts and ideas and kind of concerns and comments, and so that's allowed us to at least be able to come armed with the fact that, yes, we're willing to work and make this happen so that we can hopefully get the approvals tonight so that we can continue to move forward with the development. Obviously, with the conditional approval on finalizing our deals with all the different abbreviations, so.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Jenkins.
Continue. I'd like to make a motion to grant final site plan approval upon addressing all the comments and conditions in the Monroe County, or the Manikin Smith Group letter of July 26, 2018, the Monroe County Road Commission letter of July 26, 2018, Monroe County Drain Commission letter dated July 18th, 2018, and the Fire Department letter of June 27th, 2018. Grant final site plan approval subject to those items being addressed, and the addition of the fence, landscape fence along the south property line, and providing the planning department with the signage details, even though we know they're going to comply with the ordinance, so. Anything else? I think that's it. Right, that too.
And adjusting the trees that are currently identified on the south boundary to actually kind of screen the loading and unloading area for the semi. But I think that's obviously something Karen could certainly say okay on. 3 feet.
All right,
motion.
we have a motion. Any support?
I'll support that.
All right, we have support.
Before we vote, would you take your finger, put it on there, tell me where the fence is gonna be? The
The
fence?
fence that we've just recently talked about?
Yes.
Right here.
Okay, then how far around the entire parcel?
It will go to the
There?
buffer.
Okay.
It will go to the natural buffer that exists right now that will not.
And earlier, we talked about a fence with respect to the trees. So is there a fence in the back?
There is not a fence here, but as discussed,
Yeah?
there is no light pollution that's going to be happening.
Okay, now go to the southeast over there. All along that ravine, nothing in there, just the trees.
Just the trees and the plantings that are gonna be
All
obviously
right.
reallocated.
Now, just go, you just go up to that part. Are there anything up in there? Any fences in there?
There's obviously the landscaping here and then the trees that were identified.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I understand.
Nope, you're good.
All right.
You take your finger down now.
Yeah, right.
Karen, if you would like to take the roll.
Thank you for your finger.
You're welcome.
At least you didn't give it to me.
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Garbrick?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Mr. Anger?
Yes,
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
thank you. All right, lastly on the agenda is a request for final site plan approval for Sunrise Windows on parcel number 5802-035-01030, otherwise known as 200 Enterprise, Temperance, Michigan. Karen, can-
One moment. Again, the site characteristics, the owner is proposing a 70,380 square foot addition to be attached to the west end of the existing 94,371 square foot building on 10.130 acres. An additional 46 employee parking spaces are proposed east of the building on the neighboring parcel, which is also under the applicant's ownership. A landscape buffer is being installed along the west property line where abutting Albert Drain, a 60-foot wide parcel owned by the Monroe County Drain Commission. As well, on August 7, 2001, the Township Board granted a variance from the required 5-to-1 detention basin side slope requirement to a 3-to-1 side slope for an expansion that took place at that time. The Township Board stated the variance was granted to accommodate future expansion. As well, the required fencing will be installed around the detention basin as required. It should be noted, a variance on piping material will be required from the Township Board, and the item is scheduled for consideration on August 14, 2018. As required by the Bedford Township Fire Department, a 26-foot wide fire lane will be maintained along the west end of the structure, and an approximate 412-foot, 26-foot wide gravel emergency access lane will be provided along the south side of the structure within a Monroe County Road Commission dedicated highway and utility easement. Maintenance of the emergency access lane and the fire lane to the west of the structure will be maintained by Sunrise Windows to include snow removal and keeping the area clear of any vehicles, equipment, etc., as stated in their letter dated August 1, 2018. Approval letters were received from the Bedford Township Fire Department on August 1, 2018 with conditions. The Monroe County Drain Commission on July 31, 2018 with conditions. The Manikin Smith Group on July 31, 2018 with conditions, and the Monroe County Road Commission on August 2, 2018 with conditions. Should site plan approval be granted, a motion should include the approval is contingent upon addressing all conditions of the Fire Department, Manikin Smith Group, Drain Commission, Road Commission letters of approval.
Thank you, Karen. Do we have a representative for Sunrise Windows? If you could just state your name and address, not to just let you know that we are one member short, so we still need a 4-member majority to proceed.
Kevin Romanko, Romanko Building Company, Sycamore, Ohio.
Would you like to proceed with the 1 member shy today?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. I personally like the addition. It's a nice area. It's made for this type of thing, and it's nice to see the local businesses expanding, so especially in this area. Mr. Frederick?
Kevin, did you pick up the soil erosion permit?
Yes, I did, sir.
Yes, and we have a copy of it.
Okay. I mean, it just says in here, he'll let you know or something, so, okay. And I found some stuff in here from way back in 2001, for pity's sake. I forgot all about that. That was so we could have some expansion out the west side. They have to, I couldn't see in here where the Drain Commission said they've said everything is okay. Is that with this new addition, is that retention pond, drainage pond, that of a sufficient size?
It
still?
is. It is, yes.
Okay.
Lamar, the current detention pond is
is being cleaned up, and it is being increased in length north and south.
Oh, okay. Because you're adding an awful lot of impermeable surface area, and that's why I just asked if it was still sufficient. So you're cleaning it out, and I haven't been back there in quite a long time.
Don't go back for there for a while till I get it cleaned up.
Thank you.
I'd say my major concern was already addressed in the summary, that I wanted some buffering on the west side for, in case those other trees go away sometime, but that since you're planting some,
Nothing back there.
Yeah, it's either that, or we could just leave the cattails that are in the detention pond get taller.
Mr. Jenkins?
Are you gonna provide signage for the fire lane maintenance so that they don't park trucks on that? Because I noticed there's a lot of trucks parked up and down Enterprise.
Our future plans, and it's going to come up after this, is on the property to the east of their present development, is to install some truck parking in that area so that we can get all the trucks off of Enterprise Drive. Yeah, but that's going to have separate drainage and other things from this, because this particular project's maxed out. We can't get anything more into the detention pond. So it's in the budget, and so it's coming up this fall as one of the next projects that we'll be doing at Sunrise.
Yes, Karen?
If I may offer clarification, I did speak with Randy Pierce of the Monroe County Road Commission, and the Road Commission has offered to install signs where that road ends in gravel for fire access. They're going to provide it. I asked that they please contact the fire department to ensure those signs are placed so they would not create any issue for the fire department.
All right, if there's no other comment, I will entertain a motion.
You can do this?
Yeah, go ahead. I was just getting ready, but go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that, I lost my page here. Approve the site plan for Sunrise Windows located at 200 Enterprise Drive, parcel number 5802-035-010-30, subject to the applicant addressing all the issues outlined in all the county and other review agencies.
Second.
Second. Can you call roll, Karen?
Mr. Jenkins?
Yes.
Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Mr. Garbrick?
Yes.
Mr. Zebek?
Yes.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Mr. Anger?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, gentlemen.
you.
You may not know, but they do have a facility over in Matzinger, which is sort of on the other side of the line. And they're taking all the employees and equipment and moving it over back into Michigan into this 70,000 square foot that we're putting up.
Oh, nice.
All the glass cutting and all the window manufacturing is gonna be moved out of there?
No, it's all being moved from Matzinger.
That's what I thought you said.
And bringing it all
Yeah.
over back into Michigan.
That was an old Great Lakes facility, wasn't it?
No, this is the space that they're leasing over on Matzinger, that Sunrise Windows is leasing because they didn't have enough room
Oh,
at their
okay.
present facility. Yeah, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Lastly, we have public comment. This is for anybody that would like to speak on anything that we have here.
Steve Lennox, 7261 Forest Valley Road. Just a couple of comments I'd like to make. First of all, my applicant paid $1,500 to the planning board or whoever, and we did not get a copy of the wage trim, or whoever it was that wrote the report. I think it's a disgrace But a guy shows up at a meeting and gets blindsided without the opportunity to review a report ahead of time, gets blindsided by the negative comments of a planner. And I'm gonna be taking this up with the township board as well. That should never happen. People pay their money, they should get a copy of the report. They should see who wrote the report. They should see the assumptions in the report. They should see everything that you see in that report. It's totally unfair and inappropriate to do that, period. Secondly, I just want to make another final comment, leave you with this. There was zero public opposition to the request we made from the neighbors of that property. Somebody else got up to comment. It has no skin in this game whatsoever, but there was zero public opposition from other people. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to make a public comment?
Gail Kane, 1056 West Temperance. Couple things, guys. There's no sidewalks for the Family Dollar in Lewis Avenue. So I was just curious why this one had to and that one didn't. Trees, that's a big topic for you guys for buffer. Given the leaf disposal issue in the township, it would probably be very best to encourage the conifers so that the neighbors don't have to deal with the falling leaves in the fall. And back to the having been completely involved and directly as a township person on a committee regarding the revitalization of downtown Temperance. I'm fully aware of the studies, and I'm fully aware what the residents wanted in Temperance, and I can assure you that Stearns and Secor is not what they're looking for and never was. And the studies showed that as well. I take offense that you guys would allow someone to bash somebody, basically without calling me a liar outright, but it was implied that I have no rights to voice on this, and that I have an invalid opinion, or that my thoughts are wrong or improper. And I don't think that this is the way this township, I realize it's been going in a bad direction for the past couple of years, but this is not something that should be tolerated. It's public comment. People should feel free to come to the podium and say what's on their mind without fear of retaliation, whether it be here, Facebook, whatever means, or without retaliation. I'm encouraged, because your comments did let me know that you are looking at the big picture, that it's not just the business owner and it's not just the resident. There has to be a blending, and for way too long, this township has gone down a very rocky path. We did too much without really having a good plan in place, and now we're trying to piecemeal it. And because what's good for one is not always good for the other, they do have to be looked at individually. And I know for a fact that the C3 across the street was not a good place to be. There was a bar, there was a poker room. You had stabbings, you had drugs, and you had knives, and you can talk to any of the police departments, and they were quite happy when both of those places closed their doors. So there is an issue with C3 being close to the residents, you know, and I'm not one of them, but I do have a stake because I live here, and that's all that I need to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Paula Feldman. I live at 7120 Jackman. I would like to speak on a proposed Apple Creek, if I may.
You can speak on whatever you like. This is public comment, so yes.
Okay, I just want to share some information. I'm new to this. I just want to share some information about the proposal there, because it is on what has already been declared a wetlands, from my understanding. And I just want to mention some of the importance of the wetlands, what it provides us in this township, which is a necessity since Michigan is connected to the Black Swamp. The wetlands provide ecological services. They are a huge sponge for flooding I have had flooding in my house, don't really want any more, but with 20 structures going in, I see that that could be another issue. After there's heavy rains or even little rains, and you don't necessarily have to see the water on the surface to declare it a wetlands, it can be absorbed. It can cause issues in the winter when we have a snow meltdown. It filters contaminants through it before they reach our rivers and our lakes, which is extremely important, especially also the groundwater that some people use as their water sources. Wetlands filter out excessive nutrients as well as sediments and pollutants from the water, creating healthier water, swimming water, drinking water. It supports the flora and the fauna that we have there. I do not know if it's been checked, if there's any endangered species there of flora or fauna. Wetlands can reduce frequency of floods by acting as a buffer which slows down and holds, stores large amounts of water, which that area does. Wetlands are being restored as I speak. There are wetlands in different areas as they have researched and found out that the development of it was not the best choice, and so now they're restoring it back to wetlands. Michigan has already lost about 50% of their wetlands from draining, filling, as well as other things that they've done, such as developing it. The Wetlands Protection Law in 1979 was developed to help protect our wetlands, which are so essential. And I know there's a lot of people who are not familiar with wetlands, and so I do encourage you to do a little research and find out more about how these parcels of land are so detrimental for us, for our existence. My concerns are if we lose this, it is going to cause other things to occur in our area, which I do really like Bedford a great deal. It is beautiful, and that is a beautiful parcel of land. I do encourage everyone to just do a little research and find out what the importance for our area, our township, that these wetlands provide. And I do encourage people to come, more people to come to these township meetings so that you can be a part of this. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any more public comment? If not, we'll move on to new information. Karen?
Nothing at this time?
Any staff or commission comment? If not, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Do you still have the old Courier, a copy of the 76,
We do.
77 zoning?
May 5th, 1977.
Yeah. The only reason I say that is this board probably has never seen it. I have the original. Dennis has, I know he's seen it.
A couple of you have.
Some of the zoning that people are complaining about, and I understand, I clearly do, was done in 1977, 76, 78, and some of it made no sense whatsoever. Some of it was done by a windshield. People driving up and down the road and said, oh, that's RT, that's R3, this is R2, that's something else. And maybe I thought maybe we should just have a 10-minute look at that document so that the board understands that some of the, what do I want to say, strange zoning has been around for a long, long time, 40-some years. That doesn't mean we shouldn't fix it. And I know I've heard from several folks that say, why don't we fix it? Well, moving unilaterally by the township board, change zoning can and sometimes be a very dangerous direction. Can result in lawsuits. If the people want to come in and petition to change, as we see from time to time, that's something that we can work with. Anyhow, I just wondered if you had it yet, because I'm not sure where my original copy is, but I have the original at one time.
And if anyone is interested, we do have a 36 by 48 zoning map mounted when it was, when
Well,
the
just,
zoning ordinance
you know,
went into
just
effect in
bring it to the next meeting.
1977.
Just bring it to the next meeting or something so people can look at it and wonder. Thank you.
All right, well, we have a motion for adjournment. Do I have a second? We have a second from Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
You adjourn.